Ancient guides. That's what we'll talk about. I've been drawn a lot myself to the idea of what we glean and what we can learn from history. That's been more of the, obviously, as you can see, it's been more of a focus going forward than I ever realized. Because, you know, as I stumble my way through this, I'm kind of stumbling in the dark. So I don't really have plans. I don't like, well, I'm going to be this, and then this is the road to take. And for whatever reason, I always feel like steps behind everyone else. You know, and is that a low self-confidence thing? I don't know. You know, like, I don't feel like the smartest guy in the room. I always feel like the dumbest guy in the room, if that makes sense. That's a whole separate thing. I can go into that self-loathing very easily. But as I'm going forward and I'm noticing with life, through the book, there's a lot of avenues that like I will explore through who I am and the experiences that I've had and the journey that I've been on. So you can see that in the creation of like these videos, which are basically beacons that will lead back to the book. But also when it comes to the actual history of the world, the fake world. For a decent amount of time, it was all like built, like totally made up. It was very not. I can't think of the word right now. Not drawn from real life history on purpose. In the early days, it was very personal stuff. You know, it was very my own imagination. But I seem to have hit some sort of barrier, and from that barrier, now I'm kind of relying on real histories to inspire me. So I've been searching long and hard for events, things that happened, things that have happened in the real world, and my I wouldn't call it area of expertise, but my focus is definitely European history. It's the only thing I really care about, and then Greek, and you know, other than that, I'm not really into, I don't know, African or Asian or North American or South American. I'm not into any of those. Just mostly Europe, and then I guess Greece is part of Europe, but when I think of it, I guess I think of that separate. Mediterranean. But that's my major focus of, for whatever reason, what I found like, oh my God. Like you hear about those guys that just love the Civil War. I'm not really into the Civil War. It's a time of our history, and it's a big thing, and I can see the draw to it, but I was never a Civil War like aficionado or buff or like someone that just enjoys it. I slowly learned that it was ancient history, antiquity, if you will. Antiquity is one of my favorite eras. I love the idea of where history and mythology blend together, and you can't really see a difference. That to me is what I find so interesting, because the line of reality is so blurry. And I talk about it because that book that's back there is very interesting, and most of the things I'm reading within it probably aren't, what would I say? They wouldn't call it real. They'd say it's mythology. It's mythologized, if you will. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. And I'm not here to contest that, because it's hard to prove names and stuff, when it comes to translations of it. But what this guy here, Sylvester O'Halloran, is claiming, and he's very keen on letting you know that, oh, by the way, they're not going to fucking tell you this is true, but I'm going to tell you it's true. He's very keen on saying that a lot. What he's claiming is not mainstream. But why is there a fascination to that? Like, why would I find a fascination to, I guess, in a sense, fake history, mythology? Well, I mean, on one element, it like describes my journey as well, because my book is a fake mythology. Are there real elements in it? Most definitely, but are they given credit? Like, could there be an element of what my exploration within the creating of a mythology that there's truth? Probably, most definitely. That's the part that I don't know how to word this, because I'm making a mythology. I know what I'm putting into it, and a lot of it is a real history, or is inspired by real events or real people, historical. That just makes me think that it's always like that. Like, isn't that maybe what mythology is? Is that, or am I missing the point on something? I know that there's cultural elements to it. I understand that fact. That there's elements to creating this mythology that can lend back to reality in some sense of the word. When I read that and I scan through it, there are things that he claims, and like, okay, I guess for instance, in some sense that we're deriving the Irish history and the people of Ireland to Scythians. I've heard that before. I've heard on that Ashalogos channel about the Scythian people. I don't know what's true about it, but the more I hear it, the more I'm like, golly, that does sound like there's some facts within that. Now, I don't, there's no way. Hold on. Now there's like, I don't know. There's this, I can't explain it. It's just like something that you feel, like when you read something, it resonates, right? And there's like a part of me that's like, is there some sort of, is that because of a truth? Is it saying what you want to hear? Is it claiming something that you might quietly believe within yourself? Or is it more than that? I don't know. That I don't know. That's like explaining like how I feel the hand of God and what I do. That's like trying to get me to explain it, which I've tried. But at the end of the day, I'm always like, but I don't know. Because I don't fucking know. And as I read certain elements of history, I find a fascination in it. But I also notice, especially now, the erasing of history. Or the, like, there's two versions of like fantasticalism when it comes to historical events, and that's kind of like mythologizing something, but and then on the other hand, what you see now is blurring the lines of like now it's all about race and stuff. So like that's the blurring that's happening. Yeah. Now, I think that it's hard to like discern that thing, that part of it, if you will. I don't quite know about the parts of the past that might have been falsified for negative outcomes. That's something that's like super fucking hard to pinpoint, because you're not, you weren't there, so you don't know the players. Just like you won't get the joke of an old joke. You just won't get it unless you're in the know. If someone tells a joke about Fred Astaire, and that's not even that long ago, you're like, who the fuck's that? And you won't get the joke. Well, if they're claiming certain things about certain people, like in a historical account about this person, you're not going to have the whole scope of it. The only scope you have is what all these accounts say. Well, if there's only negative accounts of this person, you're only going to have a negative viewpoint. Look at right now with Nazi Germany. You're only going to ever hear horrible, horrible negative accounts of it. And that's just all you're going to hear. Or, I mean, I guess the Russian thing is, I don't know, that seems a little different. With Stalin, like, that seems a bit different. I don't really know about, they don't really seem to mention about Mussolini in Italy. That's not really talked about very much, interestingly, isn't it? I think there's certain reasons for all that. You know, or why do we ignore certain dictators but other ones we are fascinated with? I think it's because those dictators are people that have angered the wrong people. Something of that nature. Though again, I can't prove that. It just feels that way sometimes. And it's so true when you hear the element of history is written by the victors, right? You hear that all the time. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of truth to that. A hell of a lot of truth. So who are we to say what really happened when you have a lot of accounts from Romans? Wasn't Diodorus Siculus, he was from Sicily, was he not a Roman? Or was he considered a Greek then? I don't know the whole story of that, but that's just him and his counterparts and all the people that are also writing histories within that time or around it have this element of this Roman idea of something. So you'll see a lot of people described as barbarians that are, not Romans or Greeks. I can understand why they'd call them that, because that's Western culture. But that taints the history. So we look at our modern history and you see what's going on, what's being tainted by our modern perceptions. How are we going to look back at this time? I bet it's not going to look back kindly, I can tell you that. And they're going to be like, wow, more people should have said something. I'm like, well, they did. A lot of people fucking did. I don't think that, that's not really what I'm about, honestly, when it comes to talking about that kind of stuff. But it's trying to draw your mind into an idea that what you read, is it real or not? That's so hard to determine. In my world, in my mind, and my exploration, I found that the newer accounts, I was kind of, I don't know, there was just something about it so inhuman. We're talking about dates. We're talking about people being described of as a mass of people. And that to me is just, I guess that's why I was turned off by history. And then these tribes, talk to those people, and these people made pottery and all that. It's so inhuman. It's cold, it's scientific, and I guess that's a big turnoff. I like what can be gleaned from mythology. That's how you get the sense of humanity, of individual people. That's the beauty of it, and that's where I found the attraction. Like when I read the Iliad or the Odyssey, believe whatever you want, if it's some sort of historical account, whether it's falsified or kind of exaggerated or completely just a fucking story, whatever you want to believe, it does capture fucking people within a time. In some way, shape, or form. Because let's pretend it's all fucking made up. None of it happened. Well, all those people he made are drawn from real people. It has to be. You can't write anything, in a vacuum. You're drawing on your experiences of the world around you. These people he speaks of, he's either met or heard stories about them. So it's fantastical in some element, and that's what fantasy is. Fantasy is just a form of mythology. And then that mythologization, there's truth. You can write a fantasy about anything you want, but a lot of the people and the elements you're drawing on have existed in your world. You are shaped by your world. So that's why I think fantasy and mythology are so important, and that's why I'm super drawn to it. I think it's super interesting, the elements that can be explored. That's what's great about it. I don't know if I can make that any clearer. It's just like, you got to think, it's fantasy is so, I mean, I call fantasy mythology the same thing because they do the same job, and that's tell a story. Tell a story about a time. Everyone likes to talk a lot about how Tolkien was, they think that he was really writing about World War I and stuff like that in the Dead Marshes. If you forget about World War I, at least you have that moment to look into it and to see how one may feel in that moment. Like, that's what I mean. It's like, you look at the Iliad and the Odyssey, and you say, well, those are all fabrications, if you want to just go that way. But that does draw on realism. That does draw on events that had happened to groups of people, blown up into fantastical form, to create a story to guide people. And so when I read the history of Ireland, that's different from, like, if I were to grab a book from a fucking published person that went to school and studies Ireland, I'm sure it's going to be different. He's drawn off of the whole mythology stories and taking them very seriously as well. Well, I just think that means there is something within them. We're not drawn to like fake shit. We're drawn to realism. We're drawn to feeling real and feeling alive. So I think in these stories, that is what we're capturing. That's why, again, I changed the name of this channel to Just a Myth, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to capture the real life histories of what captured me and you know, putting within this book, and thrusting myself and the people I know as characters within it, and creating these scenarios and exploring the elements of human nature, whether it's dark or light. And the thing is, when it comes to that exploration, the more I'm talking, the more my throat feels swollen up. The more I explore that, the more I can create, I mean, like Jacob always says, real human moments. The idea that there's a reality within this falsified story. When it's, I don't know how to explain it, when I'm writing Eris, and I'm putting him in like a scenario that I've never been in, but at the same time, I've not been in that scenario, but I'm the one reacting. I don't know how to explain it better than that. I put myself in Eris's shoes, and the other characters come along. But then sometimes I have to jump in someone else's shoes. I have to jump in like Cyprus, or I have to jump into Nacum. And I have to find ways that I gave them templates, but I have to find ways of like explaining this. So like, okay, you feel this way. How do you react? Oh fuck. And I gotta sit there and think like, well, why would I do this? It's an exercise in empathy. And because it's that, I think I'm trying to reach levels and decipher these kinds of people so someone else can feel it too. So I'm trying to allow people through me to feel the empathy for people that they may not understand. So that's the personal element of it, and the greater element is the mythology of it all. What does the whole story have to say? What is it about? What are we trying to say in this story? That's the most important thing. Why is this world here? What are the people doing about that, and what is the problem? From that point, we just go anywhere with it. And that's the human story. That's how we always feel. So I just think, you know, within the book, that's been my major goal. Man, mythological story is, they're very enthralling. And I'm like just getting into it. And I really wish, as a young man, I wish I was more aware of this stuff. But it's only been in the later years of my 20s that I really took this stuff and realized and took it seriously. Well, that's been a fucking problem. I really wish I would have focused more on it. I feel so behind. Like I'm not where I should be. And that sucks, but in some ways it's like, well, who cares? Like, we gotta get going now. That's it. That's what I've been kind of focusing on. And so this whole channel has been devoted to like being as honest and transparent in that creation as possible. There are videos that maybe the lore doesn't add up, maybe on accident because I forgot something or I glazed over something or a date got wrong. Or you're literally watching something being made. I'm being transparent about it. This is the creation of it. The final product will be out there whenever the fuck it gets proofread. You know, I got some people involved already, so the ball's rolling. But the idea is you get to see this kind of behind the scenes element. Like I used to love, and I still do, watching the behind the scenes stuff of the Beatles. One of my favorite band. I wish I could watch it for other bands, but they weren't extensive as that because it was the fucking Beatles. And so I would sit there and listen. And the Beach Boys. I just listen to them making songs, talking, joking around, constructing music, watching documentaries of them, watching movies of them and stuff. Just watching it. And I'm like, I wanted to do that with the book. I wanted to show all these behind the scene things and like all these elements of us talking. And once the book's out, I'm going to start releasing these long forms of like us making it, like that I record us talking, like then we should do this and this should happen. I'll release all this stuff after the fact and you get to just see how it's done. And hopefully that inspires people to go forward with that. The channel acts just like a mythology as the book's going to. We're mythologizing a myth, which doesn't make sense because that's two things, a myth and a mythology, but we're making a reality in something that doesn't exist. And that's the whole goal of the channel. That's the point of it all. You know, it's rough around the edges, but it's because it's getting chiseled away. It's going to get better with time. In the years to come, it will get better and better and better until eventually it'll be the best thing that I've ever done. And I can finally like rest, you know. That's going to be great. But this is a short one. I didn't want to get to because I got to get going to the store soon. So just wanted to talk about that for a bit. And I made a video, so no one can say I didn't.